see. Hopefully everything's working okay on my end. Looks like it is. Welcome back. This is going to be a very short stream. Not going to be very long. Not going to be traditional by any sense of what I've been doing previously. Not a part of jar openers either. This is just kind of a individual stream I wanted to do. I had the chance to be able to do so today. So with that, a couple of things. Well, really one main thing. Christ is King is at the forefront of being debated as hate speech again. Some would call in to ask why this debate is actually taking place again. Why is the controversy coming back? Seems like we had kind of moved past that with Candace Owens leaving the Daily Wire and what came with that as well. Obviously, they can't let bygones be bygones. This is a good bit to get into. But of course, here we are once again, the repetitive nature of combating antisemitism that seems to have taken the forefront of the Trump administration, seems to be their prerogative of ensuring that anyone who dares say anything about the state of Israel is treated as if it is blasphemy, if it is not with the utmost praise and gracious admiration. It's beginning to get very, very disgusting, very, very overt. A lot of noticing happening. I think Harrison Smith actually nailed it when he had the small segment going over the fact of, you can talk about this and this, and yeah, we're free speech, except for Israel. What was that? I think that clip is hilarious. I think that clip is amazing. But shout out to Harrison Smith there as well, too. I did a little bit with the chat as well. Hopefully everything's working fine. I only wanted to make this very short just to rerun and get a good test of my equipment again as well. So any issues, definitely let me know. I've not streamed out of OBS in quite some time. So it's just going to be a dry run for some of the new technology I've been messing with. But with that being said, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe as well. Definitely go check out our new channel. The Jar Openers Podcast is actually moving and migrating over to a new channel. The Jar Openers Podcast, you can find that on YouTube. As well, you can find mentions of it as well with the America First TV, which is where we've originally been hosting it, but we will be moving it away from that. So, just want to keep things short. And here's some of the first thing that we have here. This is actually just from a Grok, a little bit of an AI analysis of the situation, but we're going to let Candace Owens, and we're going to go play a video that kind of started it off and kind of kicked off the spark, the debate here again. But as Grok has it, the debate over Christ is King amid hate speech concerns. Recent discussions highlight the appropriation of the phrase Christ is King by extremist groups for hate speech, causing controversy within the Christian community. As I would say, it is the usual actors, the repetitive usual actors that we see. But continuing here, while traditionally a declaration of faith, research from Rutgers University notes an increase in its use in contexts associated with antisemitism. This has led to varied reactions among Christians, with some defending the phrase's sanctity, while others acknowledge its misuse as sacrilegious. Basically, long story short, people have been saying Christ is King for Lord knows how long, since it's been in use for its actual literal usage. But what we get now is people, the usual gatekeepers, Con Inc., individuals from the Daily Wire, like Andrew Klavan, Jeremy Boring. Then you get the Babylon B crew, which is Joel Berry, Seth Dillon. And then you get other guys who are on like the liberal side of things, like the James Lindsays, the Constantine Conans, all of the kind of usual gatekeepers who essentially are saying anyone who uses this phrase in any way outside or devoid of context is essentially, it's like a Nazi dog whistle. It's a new way of saying like anyone who says this is being anti-Semitic, they must hate Jews. This is like, it's like the same kind of tired tropes. But there was one specific thing that kind of set this off, and it really was the fact, like what I mentioned here with this Rutgers University. This video is actually attached down here, and I'll go ahead and grab it real quick. But this is what it's from. It's just from, I believe his name's Reverend Johnny Moore, which Candace Owens will highlight here in a little bit who is behind this. But I think this is probably the best starting point here, is actually starting with this video. So go ahead and pull this up here. I can actually go ahead and read his caption here. So Jordan Peterson was involved in this as well. But he basically says from Johnny Moore, I believe this is the original, right? So yeah, 3.8 million views, obviously sparking back up to what it has been, getting a lot more viral usage and play. What's funnier is Jack Posobiec is actually getting attacked alongside Candace Owens, where he wasn't previously, although Jack is very hesitant to go against anything Israel. He's definitely not in that crowd. But he does things that are kind of safe, edgy, like he posts Francisco Franco and when he was leading the Spanish by marching alongside saying Christ is King. Things of that nature. I think Nick Fuentes even has a little bit of beef with him too. But look what he says here from Reverend Johnny Moore. He says, I need to warn you about something. The term Christ is King has been a declaration of shared Christian values for generations. But shocking research by NCRI-IO at Rutgers University compiled in a report I co-authored with Dr. Jordan Peterson demonstrates that this iconic phrase is being hijacked by anti-Semitic extremists to manipulate Christians. Again, very dredging it up. We collaborated with, I don't know who this is. He says US The Story. Us The Story. It looks like it's just some kind of organization. To explain it in the video below, watch it and then read the full report linked to in the second post below. So let's just give it a whirl here. Here's the video here. It's only two minutes long. Hopefully this sounds okay as well. Should be. We'll go ahead and give this a play here.
Since the advent of Christianity, Christ is King has been a cry for connection to the divine, a declaration of faith, a moving signal between Christians of their shared values. But what happens when it becomes a manipulation tactic designed to deceive Christians? Mentions of Christ as King have increased 5.
So that's Jack Posobiec. That's who was highlighted right there. If I pull it back a little bit, now they're kind of lumping him in with this kind of Candace Owens crowd. These individuals who are so openly anti-Semitic with their tropes that they have there. But I find it just a bit funny as well. And again, we'll just let this video play.
Christ is King have increased fivefold on platforms like X in just the past 4 years. At first glance, it would seem hopeful as people begin to reinvestigate faith in the face of increasing secularization and chaos in the world. But the NCRI, an organization at the forefront of monitoring deep trends in data, observed a striking and nefarious development around the phrase Christ is King beginning in 2021. In 2024, more than 50% of all engagements around Christ is King posts were driven by extremist influencers. The word extremist gets used a lot, and many are understandably skeptical at its use. But we're talking about people like this.
I used sex as a tool to make women love me so they'd obey me and live in my house and make me money.
Catholics and Christians were going missing on Passover, then they would find bodies, and they were able to trace them back to Jews. Blood libel!
Real Africans, on average, have an IQ of 65.
Posts like these achieved over 13.6 million views and more than 100,000 engagements during.
And that's what I was meaning right now. They're kind of throwing Jack Posobiec into this group, which if anyone's kind of in the political know, at least, on the right-wing side of things, they know Jack Posobiec does a lot to distance himself from that. He definitely doesn't fall into that crowd per se. But again, none of those videos had them saying Christ is King. They're just attaching the fact that these people profess and say Christ is King with other views that they have that they find it to be very dangerous, very anti-Semitic. They kind of highlight the fact that someone said blood libel, and obviously you have to throw Nick Fuentes in there. That's just the way it goes. But here's the rest of it.
During Easter 2024 alone, while co-opting the phrase for their toxic narrative, figures like Candace Owens and Jake Shields repeat hateful blood libels. And shockingly, by 2024, the most frequently associated term with Christ as King was the word Jew. The intent is clear: manipulate well-meaning, faithful Christians into having their beliefs tethered to psychopaths. This is nothing short of diabolical. We're caught watching Christ is King being taken by the supremacist right more and more each day. These connections matter. The spiritual,
It's the supremacist right. They gotta pick the one way of describing the dissident right. It's either the woke right, now it's the supremacist right. It's all the same things that we got the last time, which was just name labeling until something sticks, and then they'll just run with whatever most people kind of run with. I think the woke right was doing a lot of work for them there. They should have stuck with that.
The linguistic, the interpersonal, they shape us, they shape our society, and they shape the world.
Nice to see you in here,
What kind
Donnie.
of connections do we want to build? And more importantly, what kind of world will we help create? Help retake our values.
So whatever this organization is, no idea who they are. I'm sure they're if I had my guess, I'm sure they're Jewish backed. But this is kind of in tandem here. Everyone kind of covered this a bit. Obviously, Hodge Twins saying, how is Christ saying Christ is king anti-Semitic when Christ himself was a Semite? You know, and then you have the Daily Beast here who's joining up to team up, right? Oh, look at these allies they got here. Jordan Peterson, you know, tapping in the Daily Beast. And if anyone had followed the Daily Beast during like the COVID era, they're the most degenerate left-wing, just garbage you'll ever see. But they write, why MAGA must expel the podcast Pied Pipers of anti-Semitism. And I think Candace Owens kind of quoted this and said, imagine if it was the other way around. You know, imagine if any Christian, yeah, that's what she said, yeah. Imagine the reaction of a Christian who wrote an article calling for Jews to be expelled from anything. This is really just so wild. It's the same, it's like we're going to do this over and over and over again until they finally pull the wool over people's eyes. And they just, anyone who says Christ is king or anything remotely like offensively Christian in terms of like maybe like what Andrew Wilson is doing, maybe to a lesser degree, but just in a form of a context that applies what occurred previously with parallels we see now. Just expect this to continue. There is no reason for this to get dropped. No reason for it to go as viral as it did. Nice to see you in your house. House says, wasn't the study done by 9 Jews, 2 Indians, and 1 Protestant who happens to work with the ADL? Yes, that's actually what I was going to get to as well. If you get to the video that Candace Owens, yeah, I got it right here. This is like a 5-minute clip from her as well. But that's what she highlights out here. And she writes, these tactics of trying to divide Christians between good little Christians and bad Christians are reminiscent of the psychological tactics deployed on American slaves. Not 1 inch. This, again, this falls in line with everything I'd kind of been about leading up to this as well. I think most people who are in the space of whether it is Andrew Tate or whether it is Candace Owens, or whether it is Fuentes, or whether it's Ian Carroll now you have a little bit of what we're getting from Martyr Made, although he definitely doesn't fit this mold. He's just more of an objective historian who kind of has dangerous views for post-World War II consensus values. But there's a lot of more people being open about the idea of there's actual context and more perspective to what's happening than what Con Inc. is leading you to believe. And so the stronger that those voices get, the more dirty the smears have to become, and why they kind of have to redrudge these things up, because they have to stop the bleeding of everyday normal American Christian men, mostly. Now there are Christian women who are seeing this, you know, people who are like Sarah Stock as well, who recently debated Sam Cedar on the Jubilee, I don't know if you call it a podcast, but video series, whatever. They are flowing like rivers to this new kind of thought, like to all this kind of recently unlocked thought, which is a very common thing you see on any platform when it goes, you know, absolute free speech. It allows the right wing that actually technically really doesn't exist in mainstream media becomes open. These ideas kind of get flowed back out. People kind of get a chance to re-up with them, look at these, go over these things that have just been kind of blotted from anything to be talking about. And then now you get a lot of what we see, which is the constant smearing, more and more men. I mean, the ratios are consistent when these people go at it. So they got to run cover. And the fact that you do have people like Jordan Peterson and James Lindsay who are overt. I mean, James Lindsay for sure is an atheist, and he said so, and he's spoken a lot to that. Jordan Peterson, who the most he can kind of do is say, wow, it's a great story. I don't think I've ever specifically seen him profess faith, but you have these guys are now, well, here's how Christians should act. Excuse me? Like you self-profess atheist? Like you're trying to tell me like how I'm supposed to be a Christian, let alone like now you're smearing anybody who disagrees with you on the way that some of these words are said. Now, there are plenty of other people who kind of put a little bit more context to it that say, you know, it doesn't matter who's saying it. The fact that it's just being pronounced, period, is just like, that's just a generally good thing. Like it should be pronounced, whether it's from people who don't believe or people who do. I mean, one of the things that they kind of go along with is the fact that Satan believes in Jesus. I mean, that's a part of like faith that most people kind of avoid or don't talk about. It may be one of those lesser talked about aspects. But we'll get to this video here. It's about 5 minutes long. And it's nice to see you guys in here too. It looks like I have the chat rolling the opposite way. It's supposed to start from the bottom and go up. So I apologize. I'll fix that next time. But Donnie Brooks said, the ironic thing is Jews actually think everyone else is inferior, but somehow we are called the supremacist. Right. Well, it's projection. And one thing that kind of is very bothersome is you kind of do press any of these individuals, whether it is someone like a misfit patriot or any one of these other people who carry water for all of the Zionism and the Jewish people. You try to press a little bit about, what does your scripture say about Jesus then? What is your scripture? What are these verses about like what you're saying, the Jewish supremacy, right? This kind of difference in law of how a person in the in-group can be treated versus the person in the out-group can be treated. And the moment you press them, you either get one of two things. You get, oh, you mean one of those posts that you saw that's all matched up verses, and they'll always do this obfuscation like that. Or they resort to the Torah and the Talmud. They're just so massive, they're so big. No one could ever read everything that's in there and know all of the context. What's like, okay, so is there like one person on this earth that like could tell me like what's in the Talmud? Like there's all these books, you have all these rabbis, but not one of you could at least profess the truth of what these things say. That's what kind of bothers me the most too. And then it's aided and abetted by a lot of, unfortunately, Christian pastors who don't know any better, are probably pressured from sources they don't understand into saying these things. Right now, you can get a little bit into the Schofield Bible with what Ian Carroll had put out. I know there's a little bit of context that's debated in there, but when it comes to the funding, but I think it's pretty set in stone. You know, the funding did come from the Rothschilds with a very specific agenda to be pushed forward about how Israel is to be treated. Now, I'm not an expert by any means, and I say things just as I see them. But if you were to take it from Ian Carroll, that's what his belief is. And I think many people who've looked into it, that's what their belief is as well. But here's a video with Candace here. And we're going to let her talk about who is behind this book and why it's relevant and why it's happening right now.
What you have going on right now is this study. I find this timing to be remarkably suspicious. The way they're trying to pull Christians apart and make them think that they can be a better Christian is so reminiscent to me of a discussion I had with Dr. Ben Carson, actually, about slavery. And he was saying, and that, you know, historically speaking, this was sort of the concept of the field Negro and the house Negro, right? Like, you're the house Negro, so you're preferred. That's the field Negro. You don't want to be a field Negro, you want to be a house Negro. So here's what you have to do to be a house Negro. This is the same sort of a psychological tactic. They're essentially saying there are certain types of Christians that are beyond the pale. And if you want to be a good little house Christian, here's all you have to do. Condemn them that are out in the field. And I won't play this game anymore. And what I am particularly peeved about regarding this study, which Jordan Peterson took part in, is when you look at, because I just said, okay, who funded this study? Who did this study? Is this Christians coming together and recognizing a problem amongst Christians? Because that would make a little more sense. I would still strongly disagree. But if it was all Christians that came together in front of the study and said, hey, we really have a problem and we've got to address it, then I would be much more understanding this Lenten season. But it's not that, okay? It's not that. Look at the list of the...
And what they always will do as well is they always go to this, oh, you're doing the whole just asking questions bit. And it's like, they've effectively gotten to the point where they are terming and coining literally any phrase you could have ever used to halfway point or imply that you might be questioning the so-called narrative, the correct truth, the rightful opinion. They do so hardcore with Candace Owens, and so props to Candace Owens for holding her ground. And obviously, if you haven't saw her numbers compared to Ben Shapiro's, doing way better. It seems if you were to let the people speak and you look at usage numbers, more people will obviously go to her. If you listen to any kind of Israeli Wire pundit or any of their 1,000 of fan accounts they use that run cover for them, they would say, wow, look at this astroturfing. Yeah, all these bots that are out here. And it's done. And that's what's wild too, is the people who are on the Candace Owens side, who I consider myself to be on this side, the type who is unafraid to say Christ is king. And you should be saying it to people who outright deny his divinity, especially in terms of, people who, what you would consider would be Talmudic Jews. You would say, yeah, you would need to hear this, right? Like, you deny Christ. Where is he in your Bible, right? But you get into this, again, the obfuscation of it. And our side, and I'll use that quickly, but our side goes, you guys are being misled. There's a huge kind of narrative, a lot of this push, the money's here. It's doing this. If you look at these people, why is there overrepresentation here? Why, if you look at the history here, that doesn't make any sense. Why can't we talk about these things? Why did Hitler replace Satan as like the most fearful thing? All of these things, you point them out. And then the other side goes, wow, I think these people just hate Jews. These people are hateful. They're fake. They call all the time, with whether it's Dean Bongino or otherwise, like Jordan Peterson. These people shouldn't be allowed to be anonymous. All of these things, right? So they don't even ever actually go at the argument itself. It's always attacking like ad hominem, like, oh, you're only saying that because you're hateful. And so they're doing the same kind of things that would happen with if you were a race realist, right? If you were to say, well, I think, genetically, it looks like there clearly are differences between all the races, whether it's white, black, Asian, Indian, so on and so forth. You go through all of them. There's definitely these kind of differences there. Well, you can kind of see that in culture. And then the moment you go there, like, wow, do you hate minorities? I'm sorry. And so this defense mechanism that comes from the mental discomfort of either one, just agreeing with things or being so retarded that you have no actual kind of critical thought when you do think about these things, that you just accept what you're told, or you never thought about it for whatever reason, or till you're just a bad faith actor. But that's the unfortunate reality, is our side attacks these things as like, these people have been misled. Like, you're being misled and we think this is why, and here's the reason why. The other side goes, wow, you just must hate them. There's no real discussion there, and to expect that there will be, it's just not going to happen. It's why you don't see Andrew Klavan wanting to go debate Nick Fuentes, right? Because if he had just such a phenomenal point to be laid and Nick Fuentes was so demonstrably wrong, you would see this, right? You would see him getting clipped up all the time. You'd be like, look what he said here. It's exactly what every conservative pundit does to crazy left-wing people. But you never see it. It's a debate that just cannot happen, because to even allow halfway, an ounce or a seed of maybe there's something to what they're said cannot be allowed. And it is by definition the most bad faith discussion happening right now. And I see this stupid all the time. People are too cowardly to even approach it. Where you'll see like the quartering, or like publicly talked about how he muted the word Jew on his X timeline. And it's like, really? That's what you're gonna like publicly say that? It's just insane. It's like, when you see the way that it occurs with leftists, right? Like, I don't want to see people on the left-wing media screaming their heads off with blue hair all the time. But I don't see Jeremy going, I'm gonna mute the word leftist on my X timeline to clean it up. It's like, bro, I only see that when it comes to this one specific topic, because you're too afraid, because you're going to have the weight of all the institutions and the establishment on your ass the moment you try doing something like that, because you know how easy it is to get boxed in, because you'll say one thing one time, it'll get printed in the ADL, and you'll see it for the rest of your life. And that's just simply why so many people who otherwise could have lent themselves to the fight ultimately back down to the fact of, I will jeopardize my business entirely and my reputation if I step into this. So understand it as much as you can by the fact that most people just don't want to jeopardize the kind of comfy lives they've built for themselves to even entertain going into this discussion or conversation. For those of us who don't have the luxury of being paid out like that, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm still kind of in the obviously the mindset of just wanting to know why, right? And then you see the same tactics, what calls into question, there's probably something here we should talk about. But enough of me ranting. I'm sorry I ranted so long. But Donnie said, I consider myself a fuck shit up on behalf of the Lord type Christian, right? Liquefier 1 says they killed Christ 109 times, being expelled over thousands of years. Yes. And he says, I like hearing your flow. You don't talk as much when you have the co-host. I don't. We kind of have a underhanded deal by the fact of I'm not going to jeopardize his monetization on his channel by avoiding talking about things like this. So we keep it pretty YouTube friendly, especially when we're trying to at least grow. If we were probably able to grow out and get a bit bigger than that, maybe things would change on that end. But I wouldn't want to be held guilty of being the reason why someone's channel they worked on for the last couple of years got demonetized because I said something that I knew was going to be obviously getting attacked for. But Tain says, raise the swords for the Lord. Yes, amen. And then he says, well, Jeremy is a Jew, I believe. I'm not sure. I have no idea. I know boring is, but from the quartering though, what's his last name? Jeremy Hambley, I think is his name. And then he says the solo rants are the best rants. Perfect. That makes sense. Yep. Let's go ahead and list this out, because she's about to talk about who was behind the study that obviously sparked this debate a second time, but here it is.
the people who were part of the study. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 individuals who took place in this study. The first principal investigator there that you have, Dr. Lee Jussum, is Jewish. Dr. Jordan Peterson has said he does not believe in Christ. We're going to get to him in a second. So he's unknown, I guess we could say, an atheist perhaps. Reverend Dr. Johnny Moore, who I would refer to as the token Christian because he's the only one, and he's the one that retweeted this study and got this going this morning. We're going to speak more about him. Then we have Dr. Joel Finkelstein, who is Jewish. We have Jacob Zucker, who is Jewish. We have Danit Sarah Finkelstein, who is Jewish. We have Sonia Yanofsky, who is Jewish. We have Alex Goldenberg, who is Jewish. We have Ohad Fadida, who is Jewish. We have Gideon Furher, who we checked, and he is Jewish. We have Simon Lazarus, who is Jewish. And the last two, Anisa Jagdeep and Ankita Jagdeep, are presumably Hindu, but they are Indian. So it says this is a study that was funded by Jews to.
Okay, first of all, one thing I want to say, again, maybe the funniest meme that's happened, or at least that I've seen recently, but it's when Alex Jones, I think, was talking trash about Jake Shields and that kind of group during maybe a few months ago, where he said his only prerogative was talking about Jews, and he was like Jew, 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 and they like sped it up a little bit. It's hilarious. It's one of the funniest memes I've seen in quite some time. I wish I could have it like on replay or like play it through here or something. But the second thing I want to say too is like if Candace Owens is allowed to be on YouTube and at least say this level of things, you also get a lot of people who say like she's not pushing hard enough. Which is more of like the Nick Fuentes crowd, but he wants everybody to be banned like he does. I think there is a little bit of a smart way you can obviously apply it, I think, in terms of incrementalism. But I say that as I'm hoping that this is actually also an episode uploaded on YouTube as well. Not like I'm like too afraid if I was to lose my channel. It's like not even 1,000 subscribers, but I guess we'll see what happens. I've been attacked recently for certain things. But again, like she points out, right, 9 Jews, 1 Protestant, and 2 Indians. That's who's behind this. And again, why is it such a bad thing to call into question who would be behind it, right? Who are the people who are pushing for this to be done? Why would it not be a good question to ask if you were otherwise maybe surprised that someone's saying Christ is king? You can't be saying that for these specific reasons, or don't say it in these contexts. Who would go, well, who's saying that? Like, because I don't think that. I don't think that at all. And again, but she's going to get attacked, and she has been getting smeared, all over X. At least that's the only kind of platform I use. I'm sure everywhere else too. But to catch up with some of these chats, looks like Titan Titan said, wonder how well that would do. Sort of a Christian martial arts school. Oh, you guys talking about your Christian soldier school? I think it's a great idea. We need more men to actually be physically fit. That definitely would be a start. Liquefire says, Jones has Jew kids, just like all of Truma's kids are married to them. Or Trump's kids. Yeah. Well, I know that his son, I believe his son is Rex. I think Rex has actually taken a lot more of a Christian walk of faith recently. Maybe that was always the case for him. But any kind of smaller clip I caught a couple months ago from Alex Jones was sometimes him referring back to his son being an inspiration for why he sees things from a bit more of a Christian perspective than he did previously. But I'm not sure how much that matters if that's a Schofield study Bible version of Christianity, right? If it just is in lockstep with what we are already seeing with the majority of Christians, which just toe that kind of line there, which is Zionism. They believe that the land of Israel is what is Israel and not like the people, the church, all of these things. It's very unfortunate. But let's finish this video out here.
To make Christians war with one another during the Lenten season. That is problematic to me. Okay. And I hope that if you are a Jewish listener of mine, now that you've probably been enjoying my content and recognizing that these smears about me don't make sense. I am in the middle of a series trying to ironically to free a Jewish man from prison, Harvey Weinstein, who I believe was wrongfully convicted. And he is was one of the biggest donors to the ADL, who has me on their list as an anti-Semite. But I don't care, because I care about the truth, and I don't care about whether or not he's Jewish. I don't care who he donates to or.
I will say I have no idea about this crusade she's done with Harvey Weinstein. But I also said that about the Bridget Macron stuff early on. But I was kind of proven wrong about that a little bit. I kind of thought it was maybe a bit out there. So maybe there's some truth to this as well. But this is what we do, right? We ask questions. You don't hear a storyline. I mean, obviously you can have an opinion when you hear it. But I think Candace now has a track record of proving people wrong on specific things. So maybe it is. Maybe I do need to look at the Harvey Weinstein stuff. Now, like I sat there and went through, lines A, B, and C, and D and looked at all exhibits of evidence before I made a choice or a decision on that. I kind of just heard what other people were saying and went with it. But if she's saying otherwise or seeing otherwise, it's well worth looking into. But either way, I'm undecided on that. All I know is I have a really bad connotation of Harvey Weinstein just from the stories about him and what he got charged for in the first place. So maybe there is some truth to be told there, but let's move on.
What he believes in politically. I care about actual justice. You've probably been watching my series on Justin Baldoni, who is Ashkenazi Jewish and who is, along with Justin Heath and Steve Sarowitz, another Jewish individual, Ashkenazi Jewish individual, being attacked by quote unquote Christians, right? Christian Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, they grew up some denomination of Christianity, and yet I take their side, not because they're Jewish, not because I care if his name is Steve Sarowitz, because I think they're right, and I think they're telling the truth. And because people are able to get to my content, they can see now that all of these smears have always been ridiculous. I simply don't support Israel and what Israel is doing, and that is my right as an American. So for those of you who watch my content and are Jewish, how would you feel if during a high holy holiday, you found that a group of 13 Christians and one token Jew funded a study saying that, well, you know what? You wearing your yarmulke is actually anti-Christian. I find that to be, you just can't do that right now. And it's not what, like, you can do it, but we're just trying to explain to you that there's some of you who are doing it to hurt Christians. So we just need you guys to peel off and recognize which one of you Jews should be shouting at the other Jews. You can be a good Jew or you can be a bad Jew. That is how this study has arrived to Christians.
She makes a good point without even saying it. Now, she was pointing at how would you feel if that study had been done the other way around. But I think the real point there to be looked at is the fact of why isn't there more Christian individuals trying to influence politics in towards Christianity? Now, we're getting more of that, but in terms of the amount of money that goes into this, the amount of organizations that you see, and then you top it off with also seeing the fact of the majority of pro-life organizations are just kind of a grift. That lady who runs like that more popular one is on like the Whatever podcast sometimes, and she just says some of the stupidest stuff, like she's pushing hard for being anti-abortion, but she also wouldn't want to charge people for it either. And it's like this very just like you got to do all these mental gymnastics to understand what her position is, and so it gets like very murky very quickly. The overall point though is the fact of. And I thought about this even when I was a good beanie wearing Tim Pool listener. And when I would think about it too was the way that you'd kind of word it of, why does it seem like the left always has all of these multimillionaire donors? Why does it seem that literally these guys, all that they can do on the left wing is just dump money into the most BS retarded organizations like Black Lives Matter, Act Blue, and that turned out to be a scam on some level. But all of these different organizations just are constantly funded. But where's like the conservative Christian to oppose that, right? Why is all that we get is Turning Point USA, where they clap for gays that join the Republican side and no one says anything at all? That's something I've always thought about, and so I think it does go to the fact of what I think Fuentes talks about pretty often, which is like the best thing that you can do is be that person yourself. Be as much of that stand-up Christian man that you can possibly be. And it means chase the industries the same way everyone else does. Maybe not so much of like the Hollywood degeneracy and such, but chasing to be not only just like leaders in the field, but also leaders in your community. And that's going to be the only real way that you're going to actually inflict change, the same way that the influence is peddled how it is currently and right now. I think that's a good point to be made. No, she doesn't make that point. She just draws the comparison with how people feel. But I make the point then, why do we not see the other side? Why wouldn't there not be a group of guys who just got together and said, you know what, let's make a 2-minute video and we're going to do this BS study from, Mount Vernon University. And we're going to talk about how, how Jews draw lines in New York City for the Sabbath is actually anti-Christian. It's like, that's what, again, there's no real kind of hard power, but let alone not enough soft power. I mean, it's always just constantly fights and debates. And we are a bit of a victim to the infighting that happens naturally on a theological level, just between the different sects, the schism, the Vatican, the papacy, all that stuff. But then you throw it into the application of making it now venture forward with what we can agree on politically to do. Now it's then this is a whole different avenue. Now it's entirely a whole different arena of infighting. And then you do invite all of the non-Christian conservatives, whatever that really is, into that kind of discussion. And that's why you don't see much get done, like period, like ever. But I am missing some of these comments here. Enough of me ranting here. Let me just go ahead and play the rest of this out. Go to the comments here.
So I'm really trying to communicate to you from the heart of where the frustration and the anger comes from. Okay, it's got nothing to do with anti-Semitism. It has to do with people being able to clearly see what this is. This is a Jewish-funded attack against Christians during the Lenten season. That is a fact. There's no way, and this does not mean that every Jew participated in this. In fact, we have their names right here. We know the person who funded this organization, by the way. He is on this list as well. It's Dr. Joel Finkelstein. His father is a rabbi. So to purport and pretend that this is some, Jewish Christian issue, it's just not.
But that's how you know that there's some deep running, just extreme mental discomfort, because you have to do the preambles. You have to do every time. You have to be like, even though for the last 5 minutes I've been talking about this specific study, every 4.5 minutes, I got to make sure I pause and give a preamble to say, like, I'm not talking about all Jews, because people just cannot mentally handle it. I mean, it's like you say the word Jew and you say it in any kind of negative light. People are like, they're melting. It's the same way that I view liberals melting down over this. It's like, brother, if we can't talk about things, like, you're not adult enough to be in the room or be in this conversation then. But what do you do if it's an entire whole wing of people who are doing it? It's again, this is why the free speech absolutism is just kind of a dead idea, because everyone who supports it, like Harrison Smith pointed out, everyone who supports it, immediately the one reason that we can kind of get around it and be like, actually, it doesn't matter here, anti-Semitism. We see it time and time again. But to get some of these chats here, though, I missed a few. Let me find the right ones here. Looks like I have Pacific Loon in here. I don't think I've seen you in here before. Nice to see you there, brother. He says exactly. Plus, Blake Lively is a big boned, not a dignified size for Hollywood A-lister. What No way. Do you really say that? Yeah, I appreciate it, actually. Yeah, she's like a 5. She's like maybe a hard 4. I wasn't expecting to read that. That's funny. This big feet with that Las Vegas Elvis jawline, the horror. That's hilarious. Chadwick says, had to turn the bass down, had you on the stereo, shaking my whole house down. I know, I'm sorry. When I'm in studio in OBS, I have actually like all access to my my software, so it makes it a bit like that. So I'm sorry. Sorry if I was shook anything off your shelves. I tried to tone it down. I even tried to like talk quieter too. But Liquefire says it's always subversion and deceit, no dual citizens in government. You would think that'd be an easy thing to get across. I think that should be one of the things that we seek immediately. But I believe that was part of what was issued in HR 6090, was if you question specifically a dual citizen who's also an Israeli, that's anti-Semitic. Those are some of the things that you couldn't say, alongside obvious portions of the New Testament. No one wants to talk about the fact that there's consistent in the Knesset, in the Israeli Knesset, they are pushing to ban the gospel all the time. They do it. They try to get the vote through all the time, because again, as if you were talking about any specific group, there is a portion of them that are very, very vehemently anti-Christian. I mean, just by default of like how their belief is. And for people to sit here and go, Islam is radical and everyone else is not, it's like, no, it's just like they're just radical in the sense of they're much more willing to be committed to committing violence. Doesn't mean they're any less radical than some of the other groups. They just do it in different ways. Christians are a lot more radical in terms of even proselytizing, but doing it peacefully and consistently. You see way less of people, in Islam, the faith of Islam, especially, or the Jewish faith as well, standing outside somewhere passing books out. But you do see that a lot more with Christianity. They're a bit more radical in that sense of how they proselytize. And it goes so on and so forth, to just be radical, just kind of demean it down to what committing violence is a very narrow definition of like radical, right? It just determines like the extremeness of their beliefs, right? How deep do their beliefs run? How deeply tied are they to their beliefs as well? But TNT Psycho says, don't quote the gay Mexican as if he's a Christian. And that's what a lot of people think. A lot of people think, they'll sit there and say, he's not Christian. Fuentes isn't Christian for X, Y, and Z, because he said this, this, and this. But again, to do a classic Jesus juke, ready? Like Jesus, cross. But we're all imperfect. So I find it hard to, unless someone explicitly says something that is overtly publicly rebukable, or you say like, oh yeah, this person is definitely of another faith, they are heralding another faith, it's hard to go that far to call into their how Christian they are, right? Unless they explicitly say otherwise. It's why I kind of don't want to call that level of judgment on people, but you obviously can have your own opinions too. Six Palmer says, I need to stand up to the white shaming and the Christian shaming. Right. I mean, there's no getting around this until we are allowed to move past the hump, which is pro-white anything, pro-white nationalism, pro-white getting together. I mean, anything like that, right? To be in this state where every other group and race and ethnicity is allowed to be comfortable and allowed to be, publicly feasible to be pro their group, right? When I open up Uber Eats, I don't see white-owned restaurants. What do you see? I see black-owned restaurants. I see Chinese-owned restaurants. I don't see white-owned restaurants. So until the institutions and everything else kind of catch up, it's just not going to happen. But again, you only get that way by being in a position that you could actually maneuver influence and press influence in the directions that you want it to go. Which is why it's also good to actually be a stand-up person in whatever your industry is and be that voice. And mostly and most importantly, not be a raging cuck and a coward who's afraid to just say these things publicly. That's like maybe the most important thing. Because when we saw that Sam Cedar in Sarah Stock bit of the Jubilee, was he kind of even didn't know what to do because it was a female who was so confidently talking about this xenophobic nationalism, right? She just like moved past it. She's like, yep, that's what I believe. She didn't do the dancing of like, well, I mean, sometimes, and then like, maybe it's okay if you do it like this way, or like, maybe if you just word it. She didn't. She was like, yeah, I do. I want to be around my own people. Is that wrong? Why would it be wrong? Can you demonstrate why that's wrong? And since you did that, I mean, Sam Cedars like, what? Because the classic shame tactic, like what you had just said, Tix, didn't work. She was like, you can't shame me anymore. I know that what you do is it has a specific agenda to it. I'm not falling for it. We'll move past it and I'll demonstrate why I'm wrong logically. Couldn't do it. We got Luke Fire also says the no hide laws are the NWO Constitution or the new Constitution. I don't know what to think. I mean, if we're going overall perspective of what we're seeing with the Trump administration, the Epstein files, I mean, I say this all the time. It's just like the river flows one direction. We're not getting deportations. We're not getting any of the files out. We know we had this weird stint where everyone just reposted, publicly regurgitated MLK stuff that's been out for years that we've known. We're not getting anything. They can't, they're waiting for people to just like, no, you see that new Minecraft movie? And it's just like, it's going to follow the news cycle. Only the most kind of advent ones will be pushing for it. Maybe less so with the Epstein files. It's such a big kind of even pop culture thing as well. It has a lot of people involved in it. It's very mainstream. But you got to question then, like, we're not getting deportations. We're not getting the Epstein files. But what we are getting is we're already getting a push from Pam Bondi recently, as of, I believe, 24 hours ago, on Fox News for like the 48th time, talking about gun violence. Like, dude. Well, I mean, what am I supposed to do with that? Right? What am I supposed to do with that when I'm not seeing any public deportations anymore, but I'm seeing the whole weight of the institution going after some random guy named Mahmoud Kali, deporting him over the fact of like what he had said. And then now we're going into whole different avenues of like, how far are we willing to sacrifice the very opaque understanding that we have and very easy to understand First Amendment to crush anti-Semitism. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. Like, all I can tell you is the fact of that's clearly seems to be the direction it's going. And it seems to follow in line with what we've seen from other reporters, whether that is Whitney Webb or Ryan Dawson or Ian Carroll. And what am I supposed to do with it? Well, if we want to be most pragmatic, I mean, we start with the fact that we'll forget about all the connections here. We were promised certain things, and you're not holding up to the bargain. And this is where the rubber meets the road, right? You are either in a cult, you are in a cult, and you just are pro-Trump, whatever he says, because you think a 4D chess move's being played. Sure, whatever. Like, I don't believe it. I like him, but we put you in there for a reason. I didn't put you in there because I want to see some cool memes. Like, that's great. It's a great benefit, man. Good stuff. We put you in there, Trump, because we wanted the mass deportations. We wanted what we were promised. All the files, all the transparency. And treat you like every other politician, right? It's the way it has to be. You have to hold people and hold and stay strong on principle, or you get nothing. You get literally nothing. But a little bit more here. Cracker Barrel is white food from TNT. Yeah, I hear a lot of black people are afraid to go there. Liquefier says embrace being a racist, right? Or more so move to the point that it's not the most terrifying thing ever, right? Like, I think there's some kind of crazy Hollywood examples, but some people would rather like go commit some other atrocity before they ever were called racist, or just embrace the fact that like it's just a part of who people are. I mean, like, that's just like part of what the reality is. It's like what Martyr Maid was talking about with, especially when you go like with diversity. When you look at the lines of what diversity is, the fact that all these other countries retain their culture, and it's like all these diverse things, like, because a part of it is the fact of nurture, right? It's like, it's not just nature, but it's also nurture, combination of these things too. And so, yeah, I mean, like, just don't be afraid to be called racist, or like, just don't be afraid to be like, yeah, there are certain types of people I prefer to be around. It's not a bad thing for me to notice there's a specific way that people function. The same way that I could just sit here and be like, yeah, it seems that white people don't dance in public nearly as often as other races do. Okay, like, great, that's awesome. Now let's look at some other hard data about some of these other things too. It's fine. Have the conversation. But to avoid it forever because you're just too afraid of being called, being called a racist, it's like, well, I don't know what to tell you, man. Nothing will ever get done. You're afraid of chasing the truth. And to quote Jordan Peterson, of all people, you have to be willing to be offensive to get to the truth. House says that she works for Rebel News. He's waiting for the rug pull. I did see that. I also saw that she's working alongside Elijah Schaefer. So I don't know if like she's actually like a part on the back end of Slightly Offensive. But he gave her a shout out. And so I tend to trust Elijah Schaefer a bit more than I would the typical pundit. But we'll see. I do think maybe there is going to be some kind of rug pull there. LOL Marble says no one is going to jail. Jail is for the little people. Right. Rules for thee, not for me. We're not getting anything. I saw a great quote that was what was it? It was just a tweet, right? It was like, what we got is, it's like 0 arrest, 0 files dropped, 0 convictions, 0 charges, like all this. But then it was like, but what we did get was like 24. I think Pam Body's made 24 appearances now on Fox News. Right? Like, that's insane. That's what we're getting, right? We're getting a lot of this public, everyone's in public, do all this in public. What we're not getting is anything meaningful from it, any kind of actual real convictions, some real names being dropped, some real involvement being exposed. We're just getting, wait for it. It just, to say that, I think it's very easy to understand why people are blackpilling, right? And that comes from the fact of these people promised, they promised on day one they would get these things. Now, if we're getting promises from people who don't understand like what to be doing, then that's a whole other situation there entirely. But I do think the calls for Pam Bondi to resign won't go away, even if she comes out with the files, especially with the gun violence stuff too. That's just ridiculous. But a couple more here, and I will be signing off here soon. But I only wanted to go like an hour long. I appreciate everybody for being here, by the way. I do thank you very much for being here. Thank you. I wasn't expecting to get this much right off the bat. TNT says, understanding the process of law takes more than 4 weeks. That's not being in a cult. It's being realistic. are you implying that what, like Pam Bondi, who was the AG for Florida, needs like more than a month to learn how to be an AG at the federal level? I mean, sure, there's probably differences there, but I don't think that has any kind of real bearing on the fact that they did promise specific things and they weren't there. And the fact, I mean, Pam Bondi like straight up just lied. I mean, she had nothing on her desk that wasn't previously available. And if your AG's not number one focused on honing in on the fact of the powers that be that did orchestrate the largest blackmail ring in world history, I mean, like, I got a question, like, what's your, are you not committed to the truth? Like, what was your commitment? What takes priority over that? I can't think of anything really that would be much more meaningful from that position of power as the AG and the head of the FBI than anything else. And not to mention too, if you go down another step, we're getting like, getting these guys severance pay who were involved in like the CIA and the FBI, well, mainly the CIA. And we're not getting arrested. Now, it's been almost 2 weeks since we had the report that there were individuals who were holding the files back in New York. At a certain point, it's like you have to give results. You can't just spend a lifetime. Otherwise, then it's like, well, then how much better were you than the previous administration or any other previous Republican administration for that matter? If it takes you an exceptional amount of time to get anything done when everything promises otherwise, especially Kash Patel. He was on Glenn Beck with The Blaze, 24 hours. I'll have it released in 24 hours. You're just relying to people. And at the very least, literally at the very least, you were trying to puff yourself up and play on a narrative because you knew people would vote for that, knowing that you had no idea if you could do that or not. And either way, that's just a shitty thing to do, especially for an Indian who swore on some random thing that wasn't the Bible. It's like, now you're at 2 strikes, Cash. One more strike, dude, you're getting deported. I'll be signing that paper myself. You're deporting that guy. Mistake says, realistically, too, Epstein files are global reaching blackmail. Leveraging that information would make it easy to get your way. I just think it's going to get buried because we're always going to. Yeah, I don't have any kind of high faith on that. TNT says, if at 6 months things don't drop, I get raising the alarms. Till then, I'm on the fence. Well, I get that. But I can't at the same time take both of those and get, we were promised day one immediately, we're going to do it phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then just see the kind of PR spin that we're getting for it, as well as like the understanding of what is probably going to be omitted from it as well too. I get having maybe just wanting to wait because, you know, maybe there is some other kind of specific thing, and I would like to be proved wrong. I would like to sit here and be proved wrong, and then, you know, and then it was like they were working on as hard as they possibly could, and it turns out they were doing everything they could to do this and this and this, and it's one massive drop, and everyone can go point and laugh at me and say I was blackpilling here. Good, I want to be proved wrong. But right now, from what I've seen, along with the other context and evidence, I just don't think it's going that direction. And I think there's something else going on. Tick says, every other race can be proud of their race, but if you're white, oh no, now you're right. Yeah, Tick understands. House says, Trump can unilaterally declassify and release anything he wants. One person is alive from the JFK files, and they're 93. I didn't even know that anybody would be alive. Well, I guess that makes sense. Someone would still be alive then. TNT says, I want people in prison. Can't have a fair trial if they release things too quick, in his opinion. And then he says, what's that got to do with JFK, RFK, MLK? Yeah, I guess that's true, right? If no one's alive, who's going to jail? It would just be a matter of transparency. It would just be a matter of knowing who was involved when. Now, there's probably ties into like organizations that would call into like maybe more people need to get investigated from it. Yeah, I do get the proper vetting, but that's why it needs time to digest to the American people. I don't want to just have to take the government's word for it, or Anna Polina Luna, because she's a part of this task force. I would rather the public get to digest it the same way the Twitter files were, but they were released over a long period of time. It was like 2 or 3 weeks of consistent posting, I believe, from Matt Taibbi and there was somebody else. And the public just went to work on it, right? A lot of people were focused on that aspect. A lot of people were focused on that aspect. You know, the people will always work better than the government. So why not at least find everything you have, redact the names. The victim names would be easy. Redact all the victim names from the files that you do have. It's like one thing you're looking for in all the files, redact it, dump them, release them, start just upload them. Let the people do it. You know, even especially if, you know, like what House was saying, if no one's even going to be able to go to jail for it because they're all passed away, then all it really is going to be able to do is point fingers at organizations and maybe look at a trend there, connected there. But we'll see though. But Marba says, at the same game, they killed Jordan Rivers for a reason. Right. Well, that's the same reason you kill a lot of people. They can't be too honest. Oh no, my car's going 140 miles an hour. Oh no, I shot myself in the head 3 times in the back. Suicide. It's such a joke. But I am out of time though. Just wanted to make sure I could do a quick video here. You probably see a lot more of me here soon. Switching up things with what I'm doing career-wise. I'm going to also be doing a lot of work on behind the scenes with Worrell's channel specifically as well. But also hoping that we can start getting the Jar Openers podcast off the ground. I'm actually going to start working with a bit more of a higher end equipment too, with like Adobe Premiere Pro and like the Canva Pro features as well, to be able to get more kind of fresh thumbnails, but also to get a fresh batch of new kind of editing software I've not otherwise had to work with. I've been kind of limited my entire career with like CapCut Pro, which is like the Chinese TikTok version that has a lot of the similar stuff, but it's still limited like on base level. Who knows if my computer can even run other programs at that high of a level, but we'll see. But I do appreciate it very much. Be on the lookout though tomorrow for the Jar Openers podcast. Like I said on Discord, if you weren't aware, going to be making sure that we are porting everything from our channels down to just the singular channel with the Jar Openers podcast channel. And we're going to try to start funneling people over there. That way we can go a bit more separate onto that channel. And that way, if anything happens to what we said on the Jar Openers podcast gets too spicy or whatever, that way it won't affect Worrell's original channel. And so that we're going to do some things to put some measures in place that it's not going to nuke us if we did anything kind of crazy like that. But yeah, I appreciate everybody for being here. Yeah, good to see you, TNT. So glad you commented today. Happy surprise. Yeah, I didn't realize I was going to go until earlier today, but I decided I did because I wanted to. I had time, and obviously that's a good discussion to have about the Crisis King stuff. But yes, 07 everybody else, I will see you guys hopefully tomorrow at 7 p.m. on the Jar Openers podcast. And Little Marvel said, yes, glad you hooked up with John Crawford. Speaking of, I'm at least doing this. I'm going to do everything I can. I'm taking the guest list very, very seriously from here on out, moving forward. I will be ensuring that we get guests at least once a week minimum. And also the fact I'll be reaching out a lot more to people who I've probably never talked to as well. So that's why I said in the Discord, send me names of other YouTubers who are probably smaller creators who I maybe have not seen, but definitely send that over to me. I'd love to be able to reach out on my end, whether it's sending them an email or commenting on one of their videos, trying to get their attention some way, maybe through X, via DM. But that way we can get a lot more consistent kind of new faces and perspectives in. Not to say like you guys are tired of us by any means, but we can actually diversify the thought process here. Maybe it's a bunch of right-wingers at first, but we'll probably all have differing opinions. Obviously, I'm the radical, even, can't say half of what I think on the show anyways. Being a Christian nationalist, but we get a lot more libertarians in, and just to see how we can do that from there. But yes, Crisis King, everybody. I appreciate everybody for being here. Again, smash the like button, subscribe, share the show to your friends, and I will see you guys on Saturday. Take care, and definitely please be safe if you're out and about. But thank you for letting me test my new tools in the studio. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys next time. Take it easy.